next panel that's going to come to stage is going to be about road mapping your career. Speaking of road mapping your career, who is interested in product management? Y'all better get a little louder. We got a job opportunity. So if you're interested in product management, on the fourth floor during lunch is going to be pushed back a little bit. It's going to be like 12:30. Sorry if you're hungry. At 12:30, please go to the fourth floor because Product Gym wants to talk to y'all. They have some possible opportunities to just to network and just talk to them. So Product Gym is going to be on the fourth floor. So please make your way up there. But without further ado, we have a panel, Road Mapping Your Career. So we have 3 panelists and 1 amazing moderator that are going to be coming to the stage. Now, we have, from Artium, we have Mr. Jared McClain. He's coming to the stage right now. I only got dressed up because he was coming. From Product Gym, we have Richard Chen. He's coming up looking like a tech CEO. All right. And then from Service Titan, we have Will Flemming. Yes, sir. It's 2022. We deserve to have our locks and wear them with pride. All right. And we have Text-giving family in the building right now. Show love for the moderator. Coming all the way from Atlanta. Did I say it right? No, I'm playing coming all the way from Atlanta. We have Text-giving family, the amazing, the phenomenal, Lauren Kelly.
Wow. Hello. Can everyone hear me all right? Hey, good morning. How are you? Okay, we want to get the energy back up just a little bit, perhaps, maybe. As Kofi so graciously said, my name is Lauren Kelly. I am Director of Community here at TextGiving. I'm also an Enterprise Software Implementation Manager at Coursera. I would love for my amazing panelists to also give a brief introduction. Tell us about yourselves. How'd you get here?
Yeah, so hello family, cousins, how y'all doing? We in the building. My name is Will Flemming. I am professionally a manager over enterprise project management team at Service Titan. Outside of that, I am also the founder of Inspire Creative Agency. And outside of that, Pound Girl Dad.
Hey everybody. First, I love the theme music. I'm a little jealous that we didn't get our own, but hey family, it's Jared McClain. I am the leader or general manager of a tech enablement studio in New York. We essentially build software, mostly custom application development with our partners, typically scale-ups, startups, and mid-sized companies. We then help them hire technical talent using the same tools that we use to hire our very own talent. And then we upskill them with best practices in software, things like test-driven development, understanding how to do CI/CD work, etc. And then we leave them in a better position once we upskill them to be self-sufficient when we leave. That work that we do is very important to me. And I'm using that as a segue to support more Black and brown founders. As you know, a lot of Black and brown founders have ideas without the technical capabilities to actually enable those ideas to get off the ground. So that is what I'm passionate about outside of that day job.
2 very hard intros to follow right here. So my name is Rich. I'm one of the co-founders at Product Gym. Just quick show of hands, how many people here today are actually interested in transitioning into product management? Can I just do one quick one for the gram real quick? So how many people here today are actually interested in transitioning into product management? There we go. I came down here from New York for a reason, I guess. So our company here, we started about 5 years ago, And my background is I was a former tech recruiter out there in California, where I basically got to go ahead for 3 years, see the best interview responses, and also some of the best interview questions to go ahead and ask back by people that actually landed product manager jobs at some of the biggest companies. So we started with this idea that if you guys actually knew the best answers to give, and you guys knew how to say them, and you understood what were the expectations on the job, and you also knew which questions to ask back, could we do the same thing? And we just had our 5th birthday back in November, so we started November 2017. 3,000 successful outcomes later, yeah, I would say we cracked the code. So we've helped everybody from even people that didn't have a college degree to people that didn't have a software engineering background to people that didn't have an MBA background, people that were coming from a sales, marketing background, wedding planners, realtors, people that have gone on maternity leave that's coming back into the job workforce. And if you guys go out there and actually give our website a visit, productgym.io, you guys will see we not only help people break into the best product manager jobs, but we've been able to do it at $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 pay bumps. Most recently, we helped a young lady coming from a software engineering background get a $100,000 pay bump in exactly 46 days.
Woo.
So if you guys are interested in learning how you guys can break into product, we'll be doing a breakout session right after this on the 4th floor. Thank you.
I love it. I love it. All right, so we've got some awesome introductions. We have some heavy hitters up here, right? Definitely, definitely. So from the audience, as we get into talking about road mapping your career and upskilling and reskilling to do so, can anyone tell me what is upskilling, what is reskilling, and what's the difference? Does anyone know? Was that a hand? Oh. Y'all don't want to talk to us? We didn't seem nice. I wasn't friendly. Nobody? Okay. Spot on. See me after, maybe for a prize. I don't know. Spot on. See? Now, so what we're talking about in this session is really strategically picking skills and focusing on them so that you can advance your career. Of course, when it comes to road mapping, for a career or for anything, you always want to choose your destination. So for our panelists here, when you started your career, did you know that where you wanted to end up? And in knowing that, did you work backwards? What resources did you use? How did you even know what skills you would need to get to where you are now? Rich, I feel like you want to say something.
First thing that comes into my mind is what the gentleman from Flick Shop said, just don't give up. The only thing I knew was I wasn't going to go back to the job market again. Spending our time writing resumes for people, and the last thing you want to do is write your own resume and explaining why you basically failed. So the one skill that we just focused on was revenue generation and driving results. If you can drive revenue, you'll continue to drive results, and if you can drive results, you'll be able to drive revenue. So those are the only 2 skills I cared about.
Love it. What about you all?
Short answer is no. When I first graduated and I got into my career, it was to chase a bag,
Period.
I wanted to get a job at a highly reputable company that got a good salary so that I can, get a nice bachelor pad and a nice whip and, stunt on folks. That was the goal. But I think as I grew in my career, after that initial sort of push, it was about really being intentional about getting exposure, right? I think a lot of times you don't know what you enjoy, you don't know what you would want to partake in without getting that exposure. So it's very easy in corporate jobs to get assigned work. You have your tasks, you do that, and you go home at 5 o'clock or 4:59, you're out the door. But looking at how the business is run, understanding how you generate revenue, understanding the different pieces that make up the business, and then being intellectually curious about that, I think is extremely important. ask the questions like, hey, how are you doing this? How does this fit into that, right? And the pieces, you gotta be in tune to yourself to understand what part of that gives you life. So I would say the biggest skill is driving that intellectual curiosity to find out how each of these different pieces work together. And then the ones that you're like, oh, that's interesting, start to pull on those threads so that you can then actually get some reps in. So the second thing I would say is you gotta be diligent about getting reps in, right? If you wanna transition into product management, if you do a task or something, you give yourself one shot in 6 months, then that's a long time before you have any feedback of whether this is the right fit for you, whether you're a good fit for that career, right? Give yourself the opportunities to try these things out consistently and regularly. Get more reps because you'll get a better understanding of it's aligned with what you ultimately are called to do and whether you feel like these are skill sets that you can master. So I would say that intellectual curiosity and that diligence to get more reps in.
Yeah, everything he said. Just kidding. No, seriously though. So he actually brought up a really good point. I think for me, I had to understand what my why was. I had to really perfect that. But while I was trying to figure out what my why was, I was working really crappy jobs. I worked every job you can think of, just name it, I probably worked it. McDonald's, yep, I worked that. I worked every job you can think of. But while I was doing that, it was helping me figure out what my why was. I was like, this ain't my why. This ain't what I want to do. So my why, my big why is I want to leave a legacy that far exceeds that of me. So when I'm done, when I'm expired, I can leave something for my children's to be able to sustain and create a life for themselves. But before all that, kind of working myself backwards, as you said, I had miniature goals as well. So one of my goals, probably similar to some of y'all, was to break into tech by any means necessary. So because I worked crappy jobs, I had no care about breaking into a entry-level role. And that's kind of what I end up doing. I'm just saying, hey, I ran into a founder at a tech company. We were talking. They were like, hey, we'll love to have you on our team. I said, cool, I'll be the janitor if that's only, like, no, I'm not gonna have you as a janitor. Hired me as an office coordinator, and then from there, my goals started to actually happen. I'm like, oh, this is what it looks like. It's a real bag in here that's a little bit bigger than McDonald's. And then from there, not to talk too much, but from there, starting to make those miniature goals to be able to get to where I am today.
I love it. To share a little bit of context as well, Will and I actually worked at the same company, at Service Titan. For myself, prior to getting there, I was managing a doctor's office. I worked at the front desk, and we had these folks come in. We had just bought this new software. Everyone hated it. They're like, this is terrible. We don't want change, blah, 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 blah. And I'm sitting behind the desk like, oh, I mean, that's cool. I could probably do it better than them, right? Like, they're cool, but everyone hates it. I could do that, and I could do it better. So I gave myself 5 years, and I was like, 5 years from now, I will be doing what they're doing at a higher level. And so from there, I used any skills I could. I was trying to do informational interviews, and I broke in at Service Titan too, and I started in support. So I had maybe 5 promotions I needed to obtain to get where I wanted to go. And so with that in mind, I took every resource available to me. I would finish my work early. I would be on LinkedIn Learning. I would be on Coursera. I would be asking, hey, can I shadow you? What you're doing looks cool, so I can get some experience in that area. I'm trying to meet up with people, get my face out there, take on leadership positions, and I use that as my resources, those people around me, so that I could pull. Now, that is a great segue into what I want to talk about next, which are gateway positions. So when you have a long-term career goal in mind, a lot of times we're gonna have to work jobs that aren't the job, right? Like there are a few things, a few steps along the journey. And so for you all, what advice would you give to people? Well, before that, have you ever been in those positions? And what advice would you give to our folks here to not be stuck in that gateway position and make sure that they're actually obtaining and growing in their career?
I can start. So kind of actually just picking up from where I left off. So my first startup, again, I came as an office coordinator. A lot of my roles previous to that was just really like customer service, just kind of normal stuff. But then at at that startup, I ended up moving into a leadership position where I helped scale the team to almost 3 times what the team was at the time. I had no experience. I didn't even finish college, right? I was just going on YouTube University trying to figure it out and looking at the founder and saying, how are you doing it? And just picking up as I went, right? So yes, starting off in that, as you call it, gateway role allowed me to scale up in my career. But I ended up before, I don't even know if you know this, before I actually joined the company I'm at now, or actually coming into the company I'm at now, I ended up taking a role that was going backwards, right? It was a support role, actually. But at the time, it was the only role. And I was like, I'm going to bet on myself. I've done this before. I know this company is really good. I'm going to bet on myself. I'm going to crush these goals. I'm going to crush it in my position. And I'm going to be extremely intentional in my interview that I am looking to exceed whatever it is that this role is so I can make it into another role. So to answer your question, yes, getting into those gateway roles will help you, but also being intentional with where you want to end up will help you even more.
Yeah, I would say every role should be a gateway role, right? You know, the old adage, if you knew better, you do better, right? As you grow up, you learn more. As you get more experience, you learn more. And so it should evolve what you're doing. I'm in a gateway role right now, right? For me, I believe the pathway to see more black people in tech is not by sending them to Facebook, sending them to Apple, sending them to Amazon, right? Just so that they can then lay them off. I believe the pathway to seeing more black people in tech is to create more black tech unicorns, right? Well, how do we get more Calendlys out there where we're seeing more representation of ourselves at the forefront of these tech companies? So my gateway role right now is I help startups, scale-ups to build software products. We then hire their teams, help them hire their teams, and then we train them on best practices and we go away, right? Well, I would love to segue that into doing that exclusively for black and brown founders to be able to enable them to scale effectively their startups, right? There are a lot of organizations that are providing mentorship. They say a lot in the black tech ecosystem, founders are very much so over-mentored and underfunded, right? And then that access to the actual technical resources to be able to build out what they're thinking about are not readily available, right? So for me, when I think about a gateway position, at any given point, you look at where you're at and what drives you. What drives me is to see more black people in tech. Okay, what skills do I need to build right now, doing the same exact thing that I want to be doing in the future to pick up the skill sets I need to be able to connect folks in the right way? To be able to say, I see this partner over here that is upskilling African Americans and getting them more access to tech careers, but I see these founders that don't have technical co-partners. How can I be a connector of those things? So I think in these positions, wherever you're at, you look at the skills that you're sort of accumulating at present, and you say, in order to get me to that next moment, that next position, what can I actively go after and add to my toolkit while I'm at my current position to better position me to do that next thing? So I think it's an active, everyday decision that you have to make when you're on the job to look at what about this job can I add to my day-to-day responsibilities that I'm learning what's going to take me to that next level. And you have to do that outside of work because you're going to get a lot of things put on your plate, and when you leave home or leave work at 5 p.m., if you don't spend additional time, you're not going to have the reps to actually take that thing on at your next career. So I think it goes back to that intentionality for me.
It's I think 3 very important takeaways I just had from that is, you guys just heard Jared here say, I actually would love to link up with you in New York. He feels like he's in a gateway role himself, and then hearing Lauren say, and then also, sorry, I didn't get your name, but
Will.
Everybody's at a gateway role, actually, because where you're at is never where you want to be. if like 5 years ago when we started Product Gym, this is where I want to be, and not to sound ungrateful right after Thanksgiving, but this is definitely not where I want to stay. I don't think anybody here in this room right now, I'm pretty sure you guys all made it through your own challenges to even be here on a Friday, on a work day, but it's like, where do you really want to be later? And then, like, are you doing those things after 5 o'clock? That's big kudos to you. Like, 5 years, I have this game plan. I'm gonna make it happen no matter what. And I'm on LinkedIn Learning. What you're doing between 5 p.m. when your workday is over and when you go to sleep, and maybe waking up like an hour or 2 hours earlier, what you're doing during those times is really going to determine what you're going to be doing 9 to 5, 12 months later. So I spend my 5 o'clock to midnight and then my 6 a.m. to 8 a.m. doing the things that I want to be doing for 9 to 5 a year later from now. Because what I'm doing 9 to 5 right now, I don't want to be doing 9 to 5 a year from now. Because I want to go out there and help more people get a product manager job, right? So you can either go about that like two ways. Either find the mentors that you need and say, hey, what did you're basically, I'm the you 24 months ago, or I'm the you 12 months ago, and really rapidly just get there 3 months later, or you can do a lot of trial and error. And I think this is where the battle with the self comes in terms of ego. Like, reaching out and actually asking for help, putting yourself out there and say, I don't have these skills, but that's what you're doing right now is exactly what I want to do. If you had a time machine from Elon Musk, like how would you go back at it and do it again? Like if I had a time machine, we would have got to where we were at in 5 years and a year. No joke. When I take a look at like just spending all that time figuring out what you're trying to figure out, so I think major takeaways is you could either spend that time like trial and error on your own and have the ego, like I'm gonna figure this out on my own, or are you gonna reach out to the right people and say, hey, is there anything I could even do for you? Because time is like $1 million is never gonna buy you another minute of time, right? How do I go out there and get to where you're at like in 90 days if I'm willing to do the work? So yeah, great answers here.
Yeah, I love that. And I do want to point out one thing. I know before I mentioned LinkedIn Learning, right? Respect to them, respect to them. But as Jared said, when you know better, you do better. And I do work at Coursera now. And I will say, I just want to correct that, okay? I just want to say it is a great resource. And I know a lot of people do not know this, but they also offer financial aid. There are scholarships through Coursera, so you can learn for free. Definitely use that as a resource too. Now, speaking of ego, I'm sure you guys have seen it, especially this past summer. We hear all the time about job hopping, right? Get the bag. Of course, I'm not mad at it. But it does make me start to wonder, are people really mastering the skills in their positions before they're trying to jump to the next role? Or are they kind of setting themselves up for failure, expecting that boom, 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 I'm gonna leave at 7 and be there at 7. You can't start where you wanna be all at the same time. So for you all, how do you feel about that, especially if you have manager experience? Like, can you spot it when people are trying to move too soon? Or like, what do you feel and what does it look like to you all?
I can start this time.
Oh man.
I'm going to say this from a very privileged position, but I think you should consider more than just the financial benefits of a company, right? Go after the bag, don't get me wrong. But I think, and the statistics show, like if you're at a job 3 years or longer, you're no longer getting paid what you're worth.
Especially as Black women, especially.
So I'm not here to say that that is not a true fact, right? What I'm here to say is that I want you to think about what's going to slingshot you, not just get you from position to position, right? Because I'll give you an example. There were times where I worked here in DC, Deloitte Digital for 10 years, okay? When I made a transition out of that 10 years, I was what I felt like very much so underpaid, right? When I went to the next spot, right, I had a very sizable jump. It wasn't just I'm going after an extra 10K, I'm going after an extra 20K. It was a very sizable jump. Like I'm talking about double my salary, right? And a part of that is not necessarily because I waited it was because I had to be intentional about what skills I needed to build to slingshot myself, not just go from this position at this company to the same exact job title at another company that is going to pay me slightly more doing the same exact thing. When you think about sort of elevating or upskilling, I want you to think about the skills that are going to help you slingshot. And I want you to be intentional about working with your managers, your mentors, your sponsors at your organization to dedicate time to be able to do that. And that can mean, hey, I want to learn more about UX UI. I want to get involved with that team. I want to dedicate an hour of my schedule every week to be able to shadow or follow that teammates. And as my manager, I want you to support me in this thing. For me, hey, I want to be a CEO, right? I need to know and understand how to negotiate contracts, right? I need to understand how to figure out how the legalese of partnering with folks work. So how do I have conversations with my managers to say like, hey, before you sign that contract with that new client, I want to be involved because I want to understand how I do those own contracts. So when I go to write them myself, I feel comfortable with the language and the negotiation required to sign those contracts. So I think being intentional about working with your managers, your sponsors, your mentors to identify things that you want to try out and looking to them to help create space in your development to be able to get exposure to those things, I think it becomes more important. And so you can stay at a job to get skills that will slingshot you, which is sometimes more important than just leaving the job to get an incremental increase in salary.
Jared, I also want to ask you, how did you know it was time to leave? Did you feel like it took you 10 years to master that skill set? Or were you uncomfortable, like you felt like you had to leave? How did you know it was time to move on and upskill somewhere else?
For me, every 2 years, I'm ready to go. So like,
Hello.
there has to be something at that 2-year mark that keeps me there. That is the next skill that I want to build. So I'll be transparent. When I was at Deloitte, I took a sabbatical because I was like, man, I can't be here. I'm gonna go try some new things. If the sabbatical doesn't work out, I can always go back. And so for me, every 2 to 3 years, you should be evaluating if this is still the place that you should be, right? And so it's a constant thought process of, have I maxed out everything that I can get from this current organization? And if the answer is yes, then you need to ask yourself 2 questions. Do you feel like you can work within this organization to get exposure to something that would fulfill you or upskill you? Or if not, what do you need to do to prepare for an exit, right? Great organizations that want to support you will say, hey, you want to try something new? I value you, I see the quality of the work that you're producing, and let's find ways to get you access to this thing, right? If you don't feel like you're getting champions that are willing to make time for you to try the things that you want, and you don't feel like you are actually learning anything new, that's when it's always a sign of the time to leave.
Yeah, he literally said everything I was gonna say. No, so I'll keep it super brief and just say, do what's obviously it's gonna sound simple, but do what's best for you. But also, and I'm saying this from what I've seen, you don't want to burn bridges with the place that you're leaving from. I've seen situations where people on my team have left to the big dogs, if you will. Man, I just got this job offer from, fill in the blank big dog, and I'm out, man. It's been good. They gonna pay me an extra $500,000. I'm like, yeah, go get your bag. But what ends up happening, well, not ends up happening, but what can happen, especially in this job market, is that you can potentially be in a situation where you've just joined at the wrong time and layoffs are right around the corner. And the place you just left is still hiring. So in the situation that I've seen, the gentleman went to a better role, if you will, or a better job based on the pay. And that company ended up not only laying off, but completely shutting down. So he was without a job. He done moved to a new state, everything. He done moved to, all this had happened all at once. And I'm seeing it all unravel. But because I knew his character, who he was, and how much he contributed to our team, I'm like, hey, man, the door is wide open if you want to come back. and he's back with us. So this is kind of a low-key plug to Lauren if she want to come back. You know what I'm saying? I'm just playing.
I
I'm just
mean,
playing.
I'll come back as your boss.
I got you.
All right.
I got you. But yeah, that's it.
All right.
I think, like, when's it too soon or too late to hop? I think I really love the words you're using today, like intentional. You like, let's talk about like intentionality, right? Like, I think it's very important for everybody, if they're gonna take away anything from the talk from this week, is what do you really want? Like, what do you really respond to? I see here you got this Apple Watch, and like, actually look at it, like, what's gonna get your heart rate to move a little bit, right? Like, and then once you know, like, what pushes you, that hot button, freaking hit on that thing with the sledgehammer. Like, for me, it's being a crazy rich Asian. Okay? Like, I spent a lot of time in Asia during the pandemic, and I was like, yo, you mad amateur. You gotta step your game up. 7, 8 figures isn't cool. That's not Ferrari, like, that's not private jet money, right? But at the same time, somebody could see that and say, I don't care about that. So, I really like your mission of, like, the best, in terms of your mission, like, we need to go out there and create, more black and brown founders, and we need to go out there and create more unicorns like Hanley. That's what's gonna get him up at 4 a.m., right? So when you really have that end goal of that end game of what do you really want, then you work backwards and say, what's my game plan to get to that? January's coming, the end of January is coming around the corner. Obviously, it's probably not gonna happen it's December 16th right now. It's not gonna happen in the next 40, 45 days. But, where do I wanna be by the end of January? Right? Okay, if I need to get there, if I'm working backwards, okay, the next thing is I need these 3 skills. I need to learn YouTube, I need to learn Instagram, and I need to know how to go out there and write really good email copy. That was the game plan for us when we first started. So I was like, okay, I gotta hone for, the next 45 days, that's my game plan. And then, like, February 1st, we go to market. So if you know what it is that you really want, and then you can be realistic about not the perfect game plan, but okay, I got to get started some way, somehow. What do I got to do? And maybe it's just, I'm going to wake up tomorrow at 5 a.m. and just think about, what do I need to do? I got to be smart about this, right? So I think if you have, you should know what you should know what your end game is. Like, what do you respond to? Have a constant reminder of that, and then constantly have, like, a game plan working forward. Because then okay, it's time to hop. Or then it's not time to hop. I waited a year before I left my company, before I felt like it was the right time. For some people, it might take a little bit longer. For some people, they're like, I can go now. So it comes down to what your end goal is.
Thank you, thank you. All right, I want to do a quick time check. I really can't see behind the lights. Like, I know you're saying something to me. Do we have time for questions from the audience? How much time? All right, lovely. So, oh, dang. Hold on. Let's let everyone think of their questions. While you guys think of your questions, I'm going to leave you with the gym. I ask this question in every single interview. And no one has ever told me that they've heard it before, so write this down. Get the notebooks out. Come on. And I'm asking you all, and I want you to answer. What is one skill that you have carried with you throughout your entire career that you have sharpened and you feel is most valuable? Yeah, that was a heavy hitter. Ask that in your next interview. Ask them.
Connecting with people, being human. I think every role that I've gotten to date, I was only me when I walked in. That's all I can bring. I can't bring nothing else. I can't be fake. I can't bring something that I'm not. And because of that, it's allowed me to unlock doors that I probably wasn't qualified for. But once I got in, they saw that they made the best choice. So I don't even know if that's a real thing, but being human.
Yeah, I'll echo that. I think for me, going into roles or new positions, it's all about reputation. because it often carries you. Folks are going to introduce you to rooms before you even enter them. And so for me, I thought about how I want to be referenced when I'm not in the room. And so there's two big things for me. It's one, folks know that Jared is going to have a sense of quality for everything he does. Anything he touches is going to come out with a sense of quality. And the second is how he makes me feel in our interactions, right? Those are two things that are in my control. And in every situation, I try to be intentional about how I show up and how I communicate with folks, and then the quality of the work that I produce. And that has led to connections and opportunities that I would have never dreamed otherwise.
Real answer, one skill that I've honed on, say in my 10 years in business, is getting shit done. Like, the week is gonna be over before you know it, the day's gonna be over before you know it. Like, are you getting what you need to get done? Because at the end of the day, I also can't be fake. Like, sometimes people are they're gonna call this guy here like he's a savage, or dude, that guy's just ruthless, or whatever they want to say about anybody, right? I'm not referencing myself, but at the end of the day, your reputation is the most important thing. Like, how do you want people to talk about you when you're not in the room? I think that's very important, which is like, can you actually deliver on your promise? So for me, it's like, come hell or high water, if we say we're gonna get something done, it's like getting it done. And for whatever sick reason, like, you have to go to that place emotionally where you really don't even feel like you can go any farther. You don't even know what you're looking for is gonna even be there. But like pushing that limit emotionally and mentally and having the stamina to do it, yeah, that's what I try to strive to do.
Perfect. All right, let's get some questions from the audience. I know we have one right here.
Good morning. I just would like for each of you to speak from your different perspectives, like as a founder, working at corporate technology company, and then for reskilling programs. How do you, or what advice would you have for those that are interested in moving to that next level and reskilling? Do you recommend like the bootstrap type of programs or like the boot camps where you're immersed in like 6 months? Do you recommend trying to move within your company? And if you have any personal experiences that you can speak to in each of these, what has worked, what doesn't work, what you're hearing from other professionals about what's been successful for them or not?
I don't know about you. Could we get a repeat on that question? There was a lot there.
Basically, just curious about, there's like a lot of these like programs, professional development, you could get a degree. What do you feel resonates most in the tech industry from like a startup size company? Is it more experience, or do you find these type of boot camp programs to be helpful if you want to make moves?
I'll answer. Experience is the short answer to that question, but I'm gonna say 3 quick things. So one, we're all just making that shit up. Like, I'm gonna be frank with you. The higher up I get, the more I realize that, everybody's just making that shit up.
Facts.
And so the reality is, the more experience you have, the more shortcuts you can take to make educated guesses about how this might go. But I'm still making that shit up, right? So I would say, be confident in going after it, right? That's the first step. Like, you want to try a new skill? Do it. The second thing I would say is reps. So yes, you can go and get all the book smarts you want and learn it by the book, but you don't really get dangerous at something until you actually apply it in sort of situations and know how to adjust what you learned to the situations that you're being put in. So my biggest advice is to get as many reps on a skill as possible. And that may mean that you look for horizontal partnerships, not vertical ones. So that doesn't mean you go to a mentor or someone and say, please help me, right? It may be, hey, I want to build a website using this new React framework, right? I'm going to go to some small businesses here in DC that don't have websites, and I'm going to offer to build their website at cost. I won't charge you for my work, but you have to pay for the servers or whatever you need, okay? I'm going to help you get a website, which can promote and help you get business. You're going to let me try out this new skill of building out the front end with React, right? I get the reps, you get the website. It's a win-win situation. Looking for those opportunities to partner horizontally and not just going vertically, looking for folks and to reach down to you, I think are going to be the biggest way to get, or quickest way to get those reps. So take the step, be confident, and get some reps.
Yeah, I would say, if I could have a response to that, like, three things, right? Number one is, he is right. Like, 100%. No, think about it. There's no book on Amazon on how to navigate your business during a pandemic. You know, when people were looking at me, I was like, yeah, we got this. Like, deep down inside, I was like, shit. It could be GG in, like, 72 hours right now. But I was like, in front of the team, I was like, we can get this shit done. So number one is you gotta go. You gotta really believe in yourself. It's just like what the gentleman from Flickshop said. Like Jay-Z's like, the only difference between me and my co-founder and everybody else, like 1 out of 6 boot camps got canceled during pandemic, is our ability to outsuffer the competition is freaking unlimited. Like, compared to what our parents had to go through to put us through where we're at, we will outsuffer you guys. Like, if we don't sleep and we don't eat, we'll still kill you guys, right? So that's number one. Number two, do everything. Okay, when we first started, we're like, YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Reddit. I was like, let's do it all. How do you honestly know, right? So the last takeaway is you start small. Like, okay, the week's gonna go by before you know it. There's only 7 days in a week, so can we just get started with just 3 Instagram posts? Can we get started next week with just 1 YouTube video? Can we get started next week with just trying to book try to book Jared for a podcast, right? Like, the next week's gonna come before, nobody can stop time. So what can we just do next week? Just start, and then you just build from there. So there's no best way, just start.
Reps. That 1 YouTube video turns into, we did 3, then we did 5, and then by you get to the 12th YouTube video, you're like, I'm pretty dangerous at this thing, right?
I mean, my YouTube video that's got 70,000 views, I mean, I did that thing hungover. Myself. But we just keep putting the content out there.
That's a gem. I need to internalize that. Okay, can I see a show of hands of how many questions we have? Because I feel like we have a lot. Look at us. Oh my gosh, we're so popular. Okay, right here with the mic.
I'll be relatively quick. A few of you touched on this, but I would love your take on this. So for the past 4+ years, I was working in executive recruiting, doing executive hires for PE and VC-backed tech companies. And one of the biggest things that I saw was specifically Black and brown people and people across other minorities would do a lot of job hopping, because what they found is when they get into a lot of those roles, they get pigeonholed, and they're not really given the opportunities to actually move up in those spaces like they would like to. And they saw that, listen, I can stay here and stay confined within the space, or I can move to another place, maybe get a little bit more money, get a little bit more experience. So what would you say about, one, staying and withstanding that, or two, trying to navigate that in a way that you can still get those reps within those spaces, but also make sure that you're not being undercut from a salary and compensation perspective? Sorry, that was a lot.
Oh man. So, like, if I'm understanding your question correctly, is like, how do you, because of race, how do you not get basically pigeonholed into a particular position, right? And then, like, how do you basically make more money, despite the fact that the people that many of us here worked for don't look like us? Is that the question? I'd go out there and I'd kill the competition. I'd go out there and take a look at, I mean, I came from a recruiting background as well, from the agency, like a staffing agency side. I take a look at who the biggest producers are. I take a look at what they're doing. I'm gonna say I'm gonna do more than them. Because if I'm making the company, it is different per role, but if I'm making more money for the company than everybody else, then you're gonna give me what I want, or I go somewhere else. But like, for a lot of us here, I think the challenge is we're not in that role where we can directly drive revenue, right? So what do we do in that situation where it's clear that we are pigeonholed, and we're trying to basically push through that ceiling up. We have something in the Asian community too. It's called the bamboo ceiling. We make up about 60% of the demographic for the best universities and the best graduate schools in the U.S., but we're only less than 4% of the leadership. So my advice for when I do a talk that's like geared towards Asian Americans is let your boss know what you need to do to move up, and let your boss know I'm gonna do that. But if I get it done and you're not moving me up, then I'm moving out. Like, honestly, there's no other conversation to be had.
And get it
Inflation's
in
at
writing.
9%.
All right, awesome. And get it in writing if you didn't hear that. Now, it pains me to say this, but we are out of time. But I do want everyone to be able to ask their questions. Please find any of us throughout the day. We're here. We love to talk. Connect with us on LinkedIn. We have a lot to share. Kofi, wherever you
Yes,
are.
yes.
All right, I'm going to
I'm
hand
around.
it back over to you.
All right. Can we make some noise for them real quick? Amazing conversations. Y'all go ahead and exit stage left and right. Y'all good. Y'all good to go. Keep clapping it up till they exit off stage. Please, please, let's show them some love. A lot of gems dropped.